Yes?
Welcome to Demasked. My name is Frezzman, and today I'm joined by a very, very special guest. He is a YouTube investigator, and he's also the founder of the Pixels Under podcast. Please give a very warm welcome to Nerd Slayer.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Nerd Slayer. I'm glad to be here. As always, I love when people reach out and try and set an interview with me, even though I know I'm not the most easy person to get a hold of. So,
Thankfully, I'm one of the more patient people on this platform. And so I wanted to kick things off. I found your channel through your Death of a Game series, one of the more prominent series on your channel, and I believe it was the City of Heroes video. So, where did the idea of Death of a Game even come from?
okay, the Death of a Game series. It kind of was like an accidental thing. That's what I think is the most interesting part about it. Obviously, it's deliberate now, but it started kind of on a whim where I wondered to myself. I was talking to my girlfriend, and she was asking me about Star Wars Galaxies, and she knew it was one of my favorite games. So she just, one day was just asking me about it, saying, "Oh, what's this game about? Like, why didn't this game succeed? Like, why did the game fail?" And so she basically just asked me the question of, why did that game die? And when she asked me it just something clicked, and I was like, well, you know what? I don't even know the answer to that. And I played the game for such a long time, at least 1,000 hours in it, and I didn't know the answer as to why it failed. So it made me have to, like, go through all of my previous nostalgia and memories, but also learn kind of new wrinkles, things that I didn't know before, about maybe the way that the development cycle went and that sort of stuff. So it kind of started as really just wanting to answer a question that my girlfriend was asking me, but then it became, well, not a whole lot of material exists out there for why these games fail, and these are such high-profile titles. MMOs are, the resources behind them, they're so high-profile that there's always these interesting tales and stories behind them, either from business or, from a game perspective.
Actually, that leads right into my next question. How do these investigations even begin? Does somebody tell you about the game that failed and kind of give you general information, or do you just kind of seek it on your own?
So the answer I like to give to people when I get asked a question about kind of how I choose the next video or the next Death of a Game is always like, I would say it's kind of based on passion is the easiest way to put it. Whatever at the moment I feel is the story that's the most interesting to me that needs to be told, that's the one that I kind of tell. And so, like, there's also a caveat that I primarily focus on the biggest high profile games, and that's just because I do this for a living, so I have to make sure that I at least get my audience watching my videos. If I can't get at least my audience watching, or a good portion of my audience watching, then it's kind of like a failed investment from a business perspective. So it's like sometimes I want to cover even more niche games, but I can't because I can't guarantee that if I tell my editor to work 20 hours on it and me to work 20 hours on it, that we're gonna make $40 worth or 40 hours worth of money. we don't.
Yeah.
We can't make that guarantee. So yeah, I would say it's a combination of looking at which ones are the higher profile stories that are getting requested a lot, and also just which one on a whim I decide seems the most interesting to talk about.
So, what kind of joined with your Death of a Game series? What started the 6 Pixels Under?
6 Pixels Under, I guess it was kind of like the idea of, you look at the Death of a Game series and you have a certain perspective of what my personality is and who I am as a person, but you don't really get the full story.
Sure thing.
You don't get the full story because in the Death of a Game, you're only getting like this very, very rehearsed, very, analytical, very, evidence perspective based. Like you're getting the detective, and
you're getting good cop.
Yeah, I treat it that way. But when I'm on the podcast, I can be a lot more off the cuff, a lot less PC, I guess, if that makes sense. And then
a lot
also
less rehearsed.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's not as rehearsed, I'm not going to sound maybe as like put together as I will in a video, but I'm also going to sound a lot more what's the word? I'm going to sound a lot more relatable on podcasts.
Honest?
Yeah, and even honest in some cases, because I get asked like in my videos, what's your opinion about this game? And the funny thing is sometimes I don't really show my opinion about the game. Like in some games, I don't really talk a whole lot about what my opinion of it is, because I don't really think just my opinion is as relevant as maybe people think it is. It's more my opinion plus all of the other opinions.
Yeah, and I think it was your Lawbreakers video. You did this interesting thing where you didn't give a full opinion on it. You just kind of gave an impression of what you saw personally. Like how it was looking from your perspective, at least through its development cycle. And I can't believe that game hit the bricks as hard as it did.
That will always be one of those Lawbreakers will, to be specific. Lawbreakers will always be one of those stories that just doesn't make sense to me. And I think it's partly because I think to myself, why is it that Cliff Blazinski wanted to go off, create his own studio, do all of these things, and yet he picked Nexon as his publisher? It's just like, that was such a strange thing to me. But the stranger thing is between... if I could ever ask him this personally, I would love to ask him. But I would just want to know why Cliff Blazinski didn't let the game be free to play sooner. I just never understood why Bosky didn't make Lawbreakers free to play sooner. They waited so long to make it free, but it was only free on certain weeks. It wasn't actually free. And so it was just like, I felt like that, personally speaking, could have been an ego thing. But I don't know, maybe someday I'll get to ask Cliff myself.
Hey, I mean, in the wise words of Cliffy B, it's none of that $60 bullshit. Well, like, my opinion has gone back and forth on Cliffy B. It seems like it's admirable that he's standing up for his sort of his own ideals, if that makes sense. But it's how he defends those ideals that I don't admire, because he's very aggressive whenever somebody questions him about it.
Right.
And like, I saw an example of that recently. I believe just after Boss Key had closed, Angriest Pat of Super Best Friends, or former Super Best Friends, he just made like a not even a really offensive remark at Cliffy B, but then Cliffy was just like, oh, look how rich I am, as he like posts photos of himself in his house and everything. Like, oh, that's like, you're being a dick.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about older school developers. As much as we love them, and as much of a cult following they can have, some of them certainly exist in this space where you're just kind of like, man, like in any other space they just call this guy an asshole, but we kind of tolerate it because they've put out some good hits and some, it's kind of like a musician who's an asshole, but they have really good music. You're still like, I can't help but move to it, because it's still a good song, but
God, Kenny G's a monster, but this clarinet playing is amazing.
Yeah, or Morrison is a little bit weird, but he's got some pretty good
Mm.
songs.
Have Do you perchance know who Crispin Glover is?
I don't think so.
He played Marty McFly's dad in Back to the Future,
Okay.
and he has somewhat, I wouldn't say a huge musical career, but he has a song that I just, once in a while when I think of weird songs, he made a song called Clowny Clown Clown. And it's just this, like, discordant, like, circus music, and he's singing about a clown that he met, and it's it's the strangest thing.
That is weird.
But then, like, what's funny is I saw that, I'm like, oh, he's just making weird music for the sake of being weird, and then I saw a couple interviews with him, and he is legitimately kind of a strange fellow.
Yeah, when it's not an
He's
act, you kind of like feel a little bit worse whenever you were like judging something. You're like, oh, that person's actually that way. Okay, my bad. Thought you were just messing around.
Oh, I thought you were pretending to be strange, but oh no. Now, I've like going back to your videos. Sorry to, like I like to say on this show, the how conversation functions is picture it like a car driving off a cliff, because we're just constantly veering every which way.
Yeah,
Um,
and I'm bad at that myself. I mean, my podcast is a good example. My audience, I feel like, tries to get me to rant just so I'll keep going and not end the podcast. So I'm used to getting derailed like very often.
well, one of the questions I had, I was like, I've been I have a long commute to my work in the mornings, and a lot of times I'll listen to long analytical videos like your Death of the Game series, or like Oxhorn's Fallout explorations, and it's, something to pass the time and keep my mind off of the fact that I'm going to be working at a place I'm not a big fan of. But I wanted to see. I recently watched your Hawken video, and I was wondering, while that was going on, what's the longest? Like, how long does an investigation generally take?
I think it depends on the length of the story that needs to be told. Is like
Mm.
every game's failure has a different length of its story. Obviously, if you tell everything about the story, like every little bit, you would have very long videos. And although I would be okay with that personally, I could see how most people wouldn't be okay with it. So it's kind of like if I feel that I can and show that I can explain my criticism and my analysis as apt as possible within 20 minutes, then it's a 20-minute video. Within 16 minutes, okay, it's a 16-minute video. But most of the time, it's going to be a little bit longer. It's going to be between 20 to 35 minutes on average, my videos. And then the way that they're designed is, I'll kind of just give you like the basic rundown. At first, once I pick a game, I develop a timeline, and the timeline shows every little bit of information that I find that's relevant about the game and why it failed. So launch dates, beta dates, reviews, maybe a time the company had layoffs, maybe they had financials come out, maybe they subscription numbers or whatever else. You find as much data as possible, and then you try and essentially build the case. So it's more of like, I think of it as like the first process. I call it immersion, and it's just whatever the game is. Let's say like I just did auto assaults. It's like, did I get a chance to play the game back then? I didn't. Can I play it now? No. So it makes it kind of hard because I basically have to learn from just watching people play, and so that's much more difficult than, say, for example, going to WoW or something. Like I can go play it right now and then know kind of what to expect. So some of these old school games, I have to do a lot of relying on other people, and that's why I've designed the series to be based on not just my opinion, but I bring up a lot of reviewers' opinions as well, because the intention is to show that if we had some level of objective measure, what are the problems with this game? And obviously, objective reviews completely don't really exist. Like, there's always subjective elements, but a journalist is more likely to have an objective review than just some random YouTube, comment or,
Yeah.
Steam review. So, yeah, I try and find credible and funny enough, a lot of these old school MMOs, there's a lot of old school credible journalists. I don't know what happened to them. Maybe they don't make money anymore, and they moved to other things. But there's a lot of really good articles and content. For example, Gamasutra is a good website. You can find a lot of really useful information there. But anyway, I also use the Wayback Machine, which allows me to go back in time, if you will, and look at prior snapshots of certain websites. And so I might not be able to go to spellbornchronicles.com, but I might be able to go to Wayback Machine and look at the Spellborn Chronicle website back in 2006 or whatever else. And so I can like show that in my video. So really it's just about getting as much of the timeline fleshed out, starting from when the earliest bit of information about the game was released and the last bit of information was released, and then filling in the blanks. And then it's learning about the game if I can't play it myself, which I would say like 90% of my videos I've been able to play, and at least half of them I've played extensively. But of course there's always going to be a game or a story that I'm not very familiar with, and those are the ones that I have to lean even more on other people. And so after that part, after the early phases, then I start writing it. So I pull up two monitors. One monitor has the timeline, the other monitor has my writing prompt, and then I just write from scene to scene. So each scene is, give or take, it's like a couple paragraphs, maybe a paragraph or two, and maybe you put in on the left side of the screen, you put of the scene, you put, I want you to show this here. But then on the right side, I put actually what I'm saying, the scripts. So you write them in conjunction, and that's how they do it in most TV kind of productions. They have it side by side. You have a script, and then you also have the production rules as well. So my editor, Tom, once I complete the script and all his little clues, I hand that over to him. He takes that and kind of looks at it like a guide and then uses that to make the video. And so I don't actually really have to give him a whole lot of hand-holding at this point because we've done like over 30 videos. So he's gotten pretty good at it. But yeah, that's kind of how it works. I have my process, my creative process, and my process in general, and then he has his process. I couldn't tell you exactly what his process is because, his is different than mine, and obviously he edits and I do other things. So yeah, he's the one that puts it all together in the video, has the nice transitions and animations, and then what you see is, a 20-30 minute Death of a Game video, but in reality, of course, it's all the other shit that I just mentioned that went into it.
Pardon me. Which episode of Death of a Game would you say took the longest to investigate?
Man, that easily is going to be the first two videos. And that's because it was my first time doing it, so I went all in. My scripts for the first two, and the first two are Star Wars Galaxies and Warhammer. Not coincidentally, but are not on a coincidence. I actually, of course, went to the two games that I had the most history in. So I started with Galaxies and then went to Warhammer because those are the ones that I played the most in. And so I got a little bit lucky in the sense that those games are easy for me to talk about because I know them like the back of my hand. So of course I went to the games that I felt the most confident about first. The problem with that is that they're not my best videos because they're really early. The sound quality is horrible. There's mic clipping. The scripts just run-ons. Everything is like said at 1,000 miles per minute because for some reason I thought you had to say everything fast. Like I can't even watch my old videos, but I will say that the Galaxies video and the Warhammer video, those took the longest. In fact, those took months to make. Like both of those took at least 1 to 2 months to make. It was a long time, a lot of work. I edited it myself. I did everything myself, and it was just so time consuming that it taught me that I needed to find an editor because I just didn't have the time. And I would have gotten an inferior product versus going out and finding somebody better, if that makes sense.
You know what? That's fair, and honestly, I've considered that myself because I'm learning as I go. I'm a one-man team when it comes to this and anything else I make. and I think I need to, fix that. But when you mentioned mic clipping, I so a lot of my earlier videos are. I mean, I'm still doing them, but a lot of my earlier videos are gameplay videos, and and like you, when you mentioned mic clipping, I specifically remember it was an Overwatch video that I did. It's just every other word is just clipping like crazy, but I still uploaded it. It's still there.
Yeah, you put it out there. Like honestly, some of the best advice I ever got was just like fuck perfect, just put it out. And like I know that
Yeah.
sounds like kind of counterproductive, especially in my line of work. I want to get things as right as possible, but the truth of the matter is, considering I'm mostly a one, maybe two man show, sometimes I have a third that will help out with like maybe if I'm having trouble wording something. But like
Uh-huh.
it's pretty much just me and my editor, so we don't have a team. I don't have some like research team, so I'm gonna miss
Mm-mm.
things sometimes. I'm gonna make mistakes, and instead of like obsessing about it, these days I just try and think if I can just put my best effort forward and feel good about it, then
Mm-hmm.
that's good enough for me. But yeah, like early on, man, that was the hardest part about getting started for me, was that I had such high expectations already because I have high
Yeah.
expectations as a person, that when my product wasn't immediately as good, I wanted to quit. And I did quit multiple times in YouTube. I quit along the path from when I was age 16 all the way now. At least 3 times I quit.
Yeah.
It was like the third or fourth time finally that I started to realize, oh, okay, I need to come at this with a game plan, like seriously. And I also need to have like an iron will to be like, even if nobody watches my videos, I'm gonna keep making them. And it's not easy to
Mm-hmm.
do all of that, and it's not easy to keep improving on your videos when nobody's watching them, because who's gonna tell you how to improve when when nobody's watching them?
Exactly.
Yeah, and so it really is hard to get started on YouTube, but the hardest part is just putting it out there. Like if you can just be consistent
Mm-hmm.
and keep putting it out there, but making slow improvements every time, like notice your sound clipping and be like, that's what I did. I was like, shit, why is my sound clipping? You pull up the voice clip and you see, well, it's because it's not compressed, it's not normalized, it's not this, it's not that, it's not noise reduction. And you start to realize the technology, and that's kind of how I learned all of that, was basically trying to fix my garbage.
Mm. Well, like I started this channel. I'd say almost 3 years ago now. I want to say 3 years ago. Let's look. I've got it right here. It would be September 28th is 3 years. But it's I mean it's been fun. Like a lot of people that I've met. Like I'm not famous by YouTube standards, but I try, which is more than I can say for some of the more popular channels at this point.
Well, how about this? I'll show you something really funny, and
Oh,
I'll give you permission to show this to anybody else if you ever want to. But
it,
let me find this video really quickly.
oh, am I able to put the am I able to put the clip into this
Yeah,
interview?
sure. Yeah, if you want to. If you look at the video, that was a video. If you look at the upload date, that
Uh,
we did 11 years ago, and this was a video of me playing Star Wars Galaxies, recruiting for my clan. My clan, when I was
oh,
a 14-year-old kid, that was named the Chaotic Order. And I show you this because this was like me on YouTube 11 years
yeah.
ago. And then you look at the kind of content that I've made now, and I think, it kind of reminds me of that whole iceberg thing. I know people have heard that saying before, but you only see like the top
Mm.
part of the iceberg. You don't see all the iceberg that's underneath, that's still floating in the water as well. And
I totally get that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's like, trust me, look at me where I'm at now, and then look at this shit. That's really the story, if that makes sense.
Here's the it although it is completely different from what you do now, it is in a way a starting point.
Yeah, it was. It was like I always wanted to make videos. So like, this is the kind of videos we made back then because we didn't have the mind to know what to make. We didn't
Yeah.
know really like what we were doing, or just young kids who just wanted to express ourselves. So it's like that part is super important. But I think where a lot of people go wrong is they think just having the passion and keeping at it is all you need. And it's like, no, guys, everybody's willing to work hard. Are you willing to
Mm.
work smart? And that's what makes the
Mm.
difference, I think, between the people who make it on YouTube and don't. And besides luck is a huge part of it. I mean, let's just get that out of the way,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah.
Luck is a massive, like, some YouTubers have blown up catastrophically more than I have. And it's like, is it because their content is necessarily better? I mean,
Arguable.
yeah,
Yeah.
arguable, but fair enough. It's entertaining though, and that's what matters a lot for people. And I don't know. I guess I don't think about my videos as being as entertaining, but I don't know. I guess maybe the people who watch them think of them that way. I think of them more as informative, but I guess being informative can also be entertaining.
Yeah, and like that's like I mentioned. I kind of watch your Death of the Game videos alongside Oxhorn's videos because I love gaining knowledge about just like I'm a sponge for information that I can't use anywhere else. And so when it comes to like Death of the Game,
I
so
see.
like so when it comes to like like Oxhorn's videos when he does a full in-depth exploration of a vault and he talks about everything that has gone on in there and he reads all the uh the terminal entries, like I love that stuff, but boy, can I not explain it to somebody if they were to ask me about it.
It's kind of like I felt the same way. It's funny you say that. I felt the same way when I was younger for a long time about MMOs. I thought to
Mm.
myself, like, I put so much time and effort into these games, and for what? Like, why wouldn't I make videos? Is kind of what I would ask myself.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't I make videos? Because I play them all the time. I think about them all the time. So it just seems like it would make sense to put that in there. But back then, of course, before YouTube was bigger, you don't really
Mm.
have an idea that you can do something with it. So you're just like, well, I guess it's just useless information. And then it kind of just sits around.
Yeah. Well, like it. I find it interesting that you kind of started your like if I don't know how to word it. It seems like all of this was started for fun at it, like from the beginning started for fun. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, like a lot of different people on YouTube get on it for very different reasons. Some, just for fun, or some think they have a shot at, usurping the great Felix on top of the heap, the unreachable PewDiePie. But
Well,
um,
and I think it's because that's a good point. I see what you're saying. You're saying it's like so the people who get in it for money, they don't have the passion to stick it out.
mhm.
That makes sense.
And like personally, I started this channel. Um, it's gonna sound terrible, but let me explain. I started this channel out of spite, and like not spite of another person, but spite of myself. Because like, sure, I've been on YouTube for 3 years, but I was kicking around the idea to make this channel about 2 years prior. Like for that whole time, and there was a day where I just sat down, like, you know what? Why don't I? Like I gotta at least try. I gotta do something. Like I don't want to let it just the idea just fizzle out.
And
If that makes sense.
well, no, because if it fizzles out, then it means that your effort seems like it kind of goes to waste. And so, like, I understand that, and that's why I think as long as it's enjoyable, you keep doing
Mm.
it.
Yeah, and like I love making these kinds of videos. I love doing Demasked because I love talking to people in this same community on this the same platform. Like I want to get to know people on YouTube better, if that makes sense.
No, it does make sense. I think that especially when we were just talking about it with the podcast, but
Mm.
when you look at your favorite series is on YouTube, you might say like, I love, I don't know, Critical Role, or I love Reykjavik, or I love, this certain content creator, and I love their
Mm.
certain series. Like, um, man, what series I was about to say? Rest in peace, by the way, to Total
Mm.
Biscuit. But I was thinking, I thought of the WTF series.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, anyway, rest in peace, Total Biscuit. But yeah, like those kinds of series, you think about the amount of effort and stuff that goes into it, and you watch it, and it's like, it's awesome to watch, but you don't really know that person. And I think that's the weirdest part about the internet, is
Mm.
it gives people a weird sense of like they know somebody more than they actually do.
Yeah.
And that's both a good thing, and that you can feel more involved in their life and their content and stuff like that. It's enjoyable, but it's also a bad thing in that sometimes people don't look at you as a person. And I think that's kind of why I created the podcast, really, is I think people had this different idea of me, like, am I a very logical person in my day-to-day life? Yeah, I am, but I also am always laughing and trying to have fun, because I don't want to just be the serious guy all the time. So, but it's like, it's hard to show my sense of humor in a piece that's about, not really about being funny. So it's just kind of one of those things where I like the people who interview YouTubers, because I watch a lot of interviews on YouTube, and that's how I learned about content creation and how to do all of this stuff. Really, was just watching like my favorite people get interviewed by just people like you, really, who just want to know more about either them as a person or how they got into stuff. And that is one of the most important steps of getting better at anything. It's just find somebody that you like, find somebody's content you like, or maybe content that you're inspired by, and then just like figuring out how they got there, or like how their brain works, and that's helpful at creating more YouTubers.
I think like the most, like the best thing you can do for a person you don't know is like, what there's a sort of tactic that I tell anybody whenever they're meeting new people, and this goes doubly for if like it's not only for meeting new people, but it's also for, say, if you're going on a date or something like that. Just ask stupid questions. You don't have to like sit there for 10 minutes and like, all right, is this interesting? Am I being funny? Just start asking dumb questions. What's your favorite color? This sort of thing.
Yeah, I think Hot Ones does a really good job of that. If you watch that show, like he does a good job of asking serious questions, but also just like asking silly questions. So like, people don't come onto the show with like their defenses up.
Yeah. But then they start burning alive internally, and then
that's like, the funny part about the show too, is that also opens you up, because now you're like in pain, and when humans share pain together, they relate to each other. So anyway, that series is just totally like an anomaly in that sense. Like, there's not a whole lot of things that you could do like that, where you could cause people pain and then do an interview.
Well, like I was watching the Hot Ones episode with Idris Elba, and I was very surprised how open he was, because I had never really seen him outside of a movie. Like I've never seen him not play a character, if that. Yeah.
No, it does. And then you walk up to your favorite like actor, and imagine just being like, "Hey man, like, what's up, dude?" Like, with that energy, like him. He might look at you like, "Sorry, but who are you?" And it's not. Yeah, he's not trying to be mean. Like, I think, it's the wrong thing to do, to take it personal. But actually, can I make a certain point really quickly?
Yeah, go for it.
So this is actually related to YouTube. One of the biggest things that inspired me to want to do interviews like this, honestly, and just talk to my fans and have an open policy with my community, where we have a round table on my podcast, and my Discord is also a place where discussion is incentivized, but also just protected, because there's rules and things in place. But the main reason for all of that is that I've always wanted a place where people can go and have a conversation, a deep conversation about video games, without having people just like snipe shit. Just come in and just say shit that's totally like off the wall and just kind of ruin it, and not really try to have a conversation. Because I don't know about you, but when I'm having a conversation with somebody, I don't walk into the room and then just like make some general big ass claim and then walk out. Like that's not a conversation. That's just being annoying. But people can do that online because it's a different format. So you'll have someone come in, snipe some shit, and then they just leave, and they won't defend what they said. And so like anyway, like what was really important for me was creating an environment where people could feel like they could speak their mind and talk. But also another key thing was letting people know that like you can talk to me as well. And I think that's a big key that I wished more YouTubers did when I was younger. I reached out to so many YouTubers and they would never get back to me. And I remember it kind of hurt me, man. Like,
Yeah.
it would hurt me sometimes because I'm like this young kid and you take everything personal. And funny enough, like one of the bigger YouTubers that I ever followed, he actually, I'll link you his channel, Swoozy. He actually messaged me back, man. And it's like guys like him, even though he was just like, hey man, thanks for following, you know, that kind of conversation, it meant something to me. It was like, hey, this other YouTuber guy, I can talk to him and kind of see how he does it. And it's like, I didn't have a lot of that, you know, besides like the Swoozy guy sent me a message one time. Like I remember I reached out to so many people. And so when I started to get an audience, I noticed the shoe was on the other foot now, like where people are asking me for stuff. They want to talk to me. And at first it's easy to do because you're just like, sure, because you only have like 5 viewers. But then you get 500, then you get, you know, 5,000, 500,000. And it's just like, it becomes harder and harder to do that. But that's why I try and stay diligent with it. So I do think that some YouTubers lose the pulse of their community. And also they kind of withdraw as it's natural, as you get exposed to a lot of people. You kind of withdraw because it's just too much to manage. So I'm just hoping that I can keep my channel, you know, functioning and small enough to where even if I do increase in size, it's going to be manageable size. It's not going to be, you know, something where if I make a certain kind of video, people are just going to be pissed off that I'm making a video. You know what I mean? Like people have more general audiences have that problem. Where like if they decide to want to get into Fortnite, people will get mad at them or something. Whereas me, I don't play the most popular games, so I don't have to worry about that as much. And my audience is a little bit more niche, so they don't mind if I ruffle feathers.
Well, it's funny you mentioned. God, I feel like we've had a lot of the same experiences when it comes to YouTube, because you mentioned like attempting to contact larger YouTubers. I way back when, and I mean way back, I sent an email to Markiplier to try to just, hey, I'm a really big fan. How's it going? And then I got nothing back, and I was all bummed out. but these days, I'm still emailing, you know, people who are more popular than me, but like it's less daunting, and I'm not as, you know, I'm not upset whenever somebody doesn't answer. And that's how I think I've said it the last couple times on a couple other episodes of Demasked, but how interviews are, like how the order in which they happen is fully dependent on whoever answers the email first. You know?
Yeah.
Whoever gets back to me.
That makes sense.
And like it's I don't know, there's something kind of fun about, like, man, I'm gonna email this guy who has like 1.5 million subscribers, and he's probably got people emailing him every second of every day, but I'm still gonna try and see how that pans out. And you know, sometimes you're surprised, like well, I mean, I don't know if you saw it, but I did an interview with David Thornton, Art the Clown.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I did. It's on my channel. I think I can find it. But while I'm going, he was like, as far as people go, like to contact, he was like the quickest to get back to me. I put it in the chat for you. But like I DM'd him on Twitter, and he just immediately like, yeah, sure thing, I'll do an interview. I'm like, oh shit, it's that easy? Wow. And hopefully I don't know, hopefully it continues to be easy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think as long as you're willing to put yourself out there and just like talk to people, like some people just want to talk about stuff, just period, you know, like they
Mm.
maybe even like content creators, they would rather someone talk to them in a more personal way anyway
Mm.
than having a chat on Twitter. That's kind of one thing I wonder is like the people who leave me long comments on YouTube and whatever else. It's like, why don't you guys just email me? Like my email's
Yeah.
there. You know, if you actually want me to respond, why not email me? Because if you don't and you just leave a long video comment, I'm gonna read some of it, but am I gonna read all of it and digest it? Probably not.
Mm. Well, it's funny. I had sent you in like the original email for the interview and all that. And a little while later, you got back to me. But the thing is, like, I try to send out interviews in like big chunks, so I'll like email like 10 people at once, and just kind of throw a net out and see what comes back. And like since your name's different on the email than it is on your YouTube channel. Like I saw the email. I'm like, who the fuck is who is this? Like because it had been a couple days and I'd been at work for those days, so it's like, yeah, I'm open to an interview. I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, all right, I gotta figure out who this is. And so I had to do just a little bit of detective work myself and like go back through my search history and like try to match names. And then I saw the NS. I'm like, oh son of a bitch! Like I knew it. But there's a question that I've been pondering since this interview began, because I have had those questions about your investigations. So, just yes or no, do you have a corkboard on your wall with Polaroids with thumbtacks in them connected by string?
So it actually was planned and it never came to fruition. Not saying it can't come to fruition yet. It's still planned, and in fact, it's going to be a focal point once I get the kind of setup I want eventually. Like I want to have a podcast table set up, and
Yeah.
I'll have a bunch of detective themed stuff like that in the background. But no, technically speaking, I don't have one yet.
Ah, I'm happy my blind guess yielded results. But my like I've wanted to do this thing for a while where I want to get. I wish I knew like a painter or a really good artist that lived near me, because I there's this thing I want to do where I want to get framed photos of like terrible or disappointing game developers, but have them like painted like patron saints of terrible game design.
So like a what do they call that? Um, so there's I can't remember the art term. I took way too many art classes, so I was hoping I could remember the term. But it's basically where you show something that's not good, but you show it as art.
Yeah.
I can't remember what the name of it is, but anyway.
But I want to have like the liar Todd Howard, or was it the overreacher Peter Molyneux?
That would be. You could literally turn those into like trading cards too, because like you could have like, Todd. You throw Cliff Blazinski with his fucking Ferrari, or what is it again that he was driving in that one video? I don't remember if it's a Camaro,
I don't know.
some kind of top down kind of car.
The trend chaser Cliff Blazinski.
Yeah, and then there's Richard Garriott, the no comment actually.
So, like, I thought of something for like, you know how certain trading cards have a description of like what the monster or item is.
Yeah.
The Trend chaser Cliff Blazinski, father of radical lows, instead of radical heights.
Yeah. I mean, that actually would have been a good potential pun I could have used in my video on it, but
Well, I mean, you're free to steal that if you want. If you want to make a follow up just for that joke.
honestly, the quick little video I made about Radical Heights is probably all I'll ever make about the game again. I don't think it deserves its own video.
You know what? I was looking through and I saw your Radical Heights doesn't feel good sit right, and I was surprised that there's no death of a game. But here's the thing. Here's my question to you: was it ever really a game before it went under?
It's kind of like it like technically speaking it's a game, but like I see what you're saying from the perspective of, was it treated like a full process of a game where you map out how you're gonna work on it, like the whole? Probably not. I mean, if you just look at the amount of time that they had to do it, they clearly did it as a way to save the company. Like it's so obvious that they pulled out all the assets and threw everything up online to try and make money and keep them alive. And when it didn't work, well, they were axed quickly after that. So.
Oh yes. Well, there's this stellar moment in one of the Super Best Friends videos where they made just an offhanded joke. It's like, look, we're gonna see all the other Twitch streamers playing this out of morbid curiosity, and then they join a game and it's almost nothing but Twitch streamers. Where like they have their Twitch TV link as their screen name.
There's a lot of people like that these days.
Like, I wish I had the gumption to do that, the cojones, as if you will, but I tried that once, just once. I said, hey, check out my YouTube channel while playing like Half-Life 2 Deathmatch or something, and everybody just like, yeah, fuck that guy.
Yeah, that you'll learn the hard way that's basically what people do as a reaction to that.
Yeah, and like.
And can we talk about that a little bit? Actually, I think that's a good place to end on, because honestly, this is something that you should personally, look into a lot. It's kind of like, sorry, what did you just finish with? So I have a bad memory. So what did you just finish with? The point that you made?
I was just gonna say, I believe self-promotion on YouTube is
right.
Sort of a delicate balance.
Okay, so we're talking about self-promotion. Yeah, like this is actually a big thing that I'm still like so confused about myself. And like hear me out. So on Reddit, on most of the popular subreddits, you're not allowed to post your own content. Oh, okay. All right, so I'll go post it on Twitter. But wait a minute, nobody's following me. I'll go post it on YouTube. All right, but I have no audience. So like, where do I post my content? And that's the thing, is it's like self-promotion's one of those things where when it works and it works well, you're kind of like, you don't really care how it came about, I guess.
It worked.
Yeah, exactly. Versus like, is it easy to go out there and actually build an audience and self-promote yourself like in any like repeatable way? I don't think so. I think it just works so differently for so many people because, like you said, people have a negative opinion of people who promote themselves. And yet it's like, well, then how am I supposed to tell anybody about my stuff? So it's like a really hard problem that you have to overcome. And honestly, I said fuck you to those people. And I just like kept posting my videos on the game subreddit and the gaming subreddit and MMO subreddits. And what I would do is I would have a long thought out post, so it wouldn't just be me posting a link, because people hate that shit. So you have to learn how to self promote, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like you can't just like post links and then say come to my channel, because people are like, why? Like, I don't care about your shit. Like, I'm not going to go to your channel. But if you say, hey, if you guys love MMOs and you want to hear about like why Star Wars Galaxies died, then maybe you should come to my channel. Or hey, if you want to listen to interviews with these particular content creators, and come to my channel. And yeah, maybe at first only one dude clicks the link, because it was that way for me as well. I would watch the numbers. I knew what the click buy was, like the click buy numbers. Like I would see what people would click through and actually watch my video compared to whenever they would click on the ad, or sorry, not the ad, the post on Reddit. You could see how many people upvoted it, how many people downvoted it, and then whenever you go to YouTube, you can see where your traffic comes from externally. So I could see how many people were coming from Reddit. So at first, couple people were coming, but then my Galaxies video was hosted on the front page of Game subreddit and was one of the top rated posts. And that's actually what blew up my video to 100K views the second month after it came out, and that's kind of what started all of my growth, really. So yeah, self-promotion is something that I had to deal with personally. And yeah, it feels bad, man, when people are like, hey man, fuck you, like I don't want to listen to your stuff. You're like, well, come on, dude, like give me a shot. Like you didn't even try yet. But at the same time, you kind of have to understand there's better ways to do it. Like don't just say, like the guy in the parking lot, buy my mixtape. Maybe you say, hey, I'll help you put your groceries away.
Buy my mixtape.
If you buy my mixtape. So it's like, at least I'm offering you something, versus like just coming straight up to you and being like, give me something, give me something, give me something. So I think it's like you have to learn properly how to self-promote, but it's never glamorous, I guess, is my main point. It's never awesome to be like, please sub to me, guys. I need to make enough money to live. Like I don't like saying that kind of shit, but I kind of have to.
Yeah, and there's certain things that how do I put it? On YouTube, there's certain things that I feel are necessary evil, but a lot of them I try to avoid because I don't feel great, like, committing those necessary evils, and they're super minor things. Like, I'm not a big fan of, like, at the end of videos, like and subscribe for more. which, like, if you do that in your videos, that's totally cool. It's like, to you, Nerd Slayer, and to anybody watching this who has a YouTube channel, like, if you do that, that's fine. That's totally cool. Like, I'm just not a fan.
Well, I don't think it's very effective, actually. If you want to hear my personal opinion, waiting to the end of your video statistically is not effective. And the reason is because every video has an average view rate, which means a view duration that most people are watching it at. Most people, contrary to popular belief, don't watch all of my videos. That's why the people who always have problems with me, the first thing I ask is, did you watch the video? Because if they didn't actually watch it, then I don't care what your opinion is.
Yeah.
Because we're not talking about the same thing. But and sometimes you can tell that people don't watch your video because they'll say something like, hey, why didn't you talk about this? And it's like, wait a minute, buddy. I did. And you didn't acknowledge it, so did you watch my video? Or,
Did
anyway.
you see it?
Yeah,
Did
so
you?
You don't know if everyone's watching your video. You also don't know if people know what game you're talking about. So there's a lot that goes into telling people a story, because you have to tell people who don't know anything about the game as well. And then you add Google into that. The adpocalypse happened like a year ago. And then
the
YouTube as well.
Algorithm.
Yeah, let me get this on record as well. YouTube sometimes will flag my videos because they have death in the name. So we have to change the name when we upload them to just put it in acronym. We just put DOAG. We just put death of a game, in the acronym. But yeah, seriously, they will flag my videos, and I can't monetize them just because they have death in the name. It has video game in the name. Like, it has game in the name. I'm not trying to kill anybody. But anyway, yeah, so there's a lot of growing pains is what I'm trying to say with this still very young YouTube/games industry,
Well, I think the problem is, too, that, I feel like there have been instances where it's like, even the smallest discrepancy can cause huge problems. Like, recently with, I saw something with, he's a horror YouTuber. He does, investigations, Rob Gavigan. And before that, his last name, last name that used to be on that channel was his name was Rob Dyke, and it's spelled exactly like.
Oh man, I'm looking at it right here. Yeah, I see it.
Yeah. So he had to change it to his like mom's maiden name or something like that just to not get deleted.
Wow.
And as far as I can tell, the word Frezzman isn't offensive yet, so I think I'm okay.
It's funny you mentioned that because I've had people tell me my name's offensive, Nerd Slayer.
How did that name even come about?
Well, that's a good story. That's not terribly long. It's kind of a mixture of a game or of a gag, but also real life. So
Hmm.
I'm a bit strange in that although I am a hardcore nerd, I can put in the hours with the best of them. I think my best gaming session was 36 hours straight. So like I got the numbers. Like I'm a true nerd in the
I know
nerdiest
how that
sense.
is. Yep.
That being said, I also am like 6'5" and have been playing sports my whole life. So I'm like at this weird state, and I've always been there where I'm athletic, but I'm not really interested in athletic things in the same way that most people are. Like I don't watch
Hmm.
sports. Sports are boring to me. So it's like
Yeah.
I like watching martial arts because it's more like a video game to me. It's more complex. It's more like chess. It's
Hmm.
more strategic. So um, the idea was that when I was younger, I had to learn how to become a nerd. And so the joke that I would always play as like an inner lore, if you will, would be I had to learn how to become a nerd so I could slay the nerds. And it's true because I mean, obviously nerds are good at video games. So it's like to beat a nerd, you got to become a nerd. And so it's kind of
You
a
gotta
bit of
think
a
like one.
yeah, exactly. It's a bit of a gag. It's also a bit of a joke in the sense that I'm talking about slaying nerds, but I'm also a nerd. So people always ask me the question, so if you're a nerd slayer, does that mean you slay yourself? And it's like, well, no, I had to become a nerd to slay other nerds. So it's just like some stupid joke I kind of went with, and I wanted a name for esports because I've had a weird history over the past 10 years of being competitive at a bunch of different games, and I had a couple different names. The first one that was high profile was X Force, and then I changed it to Nerd Slayer when I was playing Overwatch,
Yeah.
and I just never switched off of Nerd Slayer. So the reason why I switched it to NS, which is still pronounced Nerd Slayer, by the way, the reason why I switched it to NS is because, as you know, just based off of sounding or what you've been talking about, what your interests are, you know that like detectives love acronyms and they love their initials. So really, NS is just like I'm a detective signing my initials. So my name is Nerd Slayer, but I sign as my initials anyway.
Like I could so clearly see that on like a business card left at somebody's door in the middle of the night. Like, oh no, Boss Key Productions is going under. Then like, there's a card stuck on our front door.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because a friend of mine who also makes YouTube videos, really good content out there. So shout out to Indigo Gaming. But he just did a pretty funny meme. I'll send to you. It's actually literally related exactly to this topic that we're having right now, or this discussion we're having right now. But he's like, "Be me, the game. Had a lot of promise, but lost my audience. Publisher cuts me off. Now stumbling through the alleys. Collapse to the ground. Weak. Before my eyes shut for the final time, I look up to a mysterious figure." In this episode of Death of a Game.
I like. That's fantastic. Like you should. Like I'm looking around just in case I'm wrong. Like just in case you've already done it, covering my bases. But like you should do like a live action intro once in a while.
I've only ever done one once, and it's on my Patreon video.
Huh.
So I'll probably splice some of that footage every now and then throughout my videos, just because my goal eventually is to be able to do skits. And when I say skits, I don't mean like Angry Joe 10-minute skit trying to be funny, and then sometimes it doesn't work. I mean more of a skit in the sense of it's a little clip that's just meant to show a slight bit of humor and also a little bit of flair and vanity, but not
Yeah,
meant to
and-
be taken serious. So it's like maybe you'll show NS the detective, which by the way, NS the detective is a alter ego of mine personally. So technically speaking, it's another character versus me myself. Me as a person, I'm a different person. So I say that to say that they're two different entities, if you will.
Yeah, yeah. And like I've how do I put it? It's like I'm. Is it like how it's an odd sentence to say. Is it like how I operate, where I I'm I'm a fella in a mask, but I'm not playing a character. If that makes sense. Like I'm not playing anything up. If that makes.
Yeah, yeah, you're just being yourself.
Yeah. I just don't want my face out there. That's all.
And I think there's nothing wrong with that. One of my favorite rappers, his name's MF Doom, and
Yep, I know Doom.
yeah, and he's had a mask on ever since. So
What's funny is if I remember that mask she's wearing is ripped straight from the movie Gladiator.
yep,
And I found that by accident because I was like I was looking something up about Gladiator because I saw a clip about it, and then it just shows a photo of Maximus wearing that helmet. Like, oh my god, it's MF Doom.
yeah. There's actually a really funny line that MF Doom says about that mask itself. So I love hip hop. I have kind of diverse interests, but the lyric goes, he says he wears a mask just to cover the raw flesh, a rather ugly brother with flows that's gorgeous. So he's saying like hey, he wears the mask because he's ugly, but he's still got flows that are gorgeous. So so the mask doesn't matter. Anyway, I always think about that whenever I think of like alter egos. I just think of that line from MF Doom where he's like, I wear a mask just to cover the raw flesh. I'm covering my raw flesh. I'm just a rather ugly brother, as he says. But then he goes on to say, of course, but my flows are gorgeous.
Now, is this a roundabout way of telling me that I'm ugly? No, just
Well, I guess it depends what your reason for wearing the mask is. That was his reason.
I like it. That's it. Really, I like it.
I mean, that's a good enough reason to do anything as long as you're not harming anybody else.
Yeah, it's
Just
not
liking it.
Yeah, it's not like I'm standing in anybody's front yard at 4 in the morning scaring the shit out of them. I'm just some goofball in a mask. Let's see here. Are you running out of time?
Yeah, I'm actually. It's more that I came straight from the gym, so I haven't even showered yet. So I'm sweating my ass off here. So that's mainly why I told you a time limit is, so I don't burn alive.
Yes. Sorry for keeping you. Let's wrap this thing up.
Yeah, sure. Anything you'd like to ask me before you go, or anything you've got?
I've got one last question for you, and then we'll do the outro real quick. If asked, would you be open to coming back as a return guest?
Yeah, sure.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
We'll have to think of something else to talk about, though. Like maybe,
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe we'll talk about some deeper stuff, like origin stories, or I don't know. We'll find
Yeah.
something else, I'm sure.
Yeah, and actually, another quick question. You said you play Overwatch?
Yeah, every now and then. I mean, I try not to, but
Yeah.
I do.
As I say, what do you play on?
I'm a McCree guy. It's noon.
No, I mean, what platform?
PC.
Same here. You want to play sometime?
Yeah, sure. You could add me. I'll warn you though. I'm really good.
Don't worry, I'll balance it out with how terrible I am.
Well, that's what all my friends tell me anyway. Whenever I make that joke, they're all like, "Good, then you can carry me."
Yeah. Thank you so much for stopping by, Nerd Slayer. It was so much fun having you on.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me. And once again, just to reiterate, never stop reaching out to people, because even if they respond a week later like I do, every now and then at least that one person will respond, and that's all you need to make more content. So
Yeah, and I love doing this, and I hope to be doing it for a long time. And but But once again, thank you so much for showing up. Thank you, those at home, for watching this. If you stuck all the way through, I very much appreciate it. Like, comment, and subscribe like your other favorite YouTubers. I'm not sure. I can't think of any off the top of my head. Philip DeFranco. There we go. That's the first one I can think of. But thank you for stopping by. This has been Demasked. My name is Frezzman, and have a very nice day.